Hello and welcome to another Assure Learns, and today is all about drug and alcohol policy. Welcome to those who are here with us in person, and to those who are going to be watching this later online. Welcome. We like to make these available on our social media pages and to anyone who's got questions in the future about drug and alcohol policy. This is an area that we get questions around a lot. People want to make sure that their policy is written in a way that reflects, and it's up to date in terms of industry standards, adhering to current legal trends within the country, adhering to Canadian model for providing a safe workplace, the DOT. There's a number of bodies that we get to adhere to in a safety sensitive world. So today is all about making sure that your drug and alcohol policy is up to date and compliant. So most of you who are watching, I would venture a guess that 99% of you already have a drug and alcohol policy. If you're in this industry, to get work, you need to provide a copy of your policy, even to get contracts, of course. So most of us at this stage have a policy in place already. So if you're here or watching this, then you're likely just wanting to give it a refresh and give it, look at it with a fresh set of eyes, which I think is so important to do, because sometimes we create these policies, they're in a binder, they're saved in a file somewhere in our computers, and we don't look at them often enough. We kind of forget. And then you might find yourself in an incident where somebody is in an incident or reasonable cause situation, and then you need to pull up the policy and quickly kind of educate yourself on what do we do? How are we, what's the procedure here? So our goal is that you would be fully comfortable with your policy before an event like that. So that's where we're going today, is to help you, give you peace of mind and confident that your policy is up to date and compliant. And if not, we're going to give you some things to think about to go and make those changes. If you need support with making those changes moving forward, that's what we're here for at Assure. I'm meeting with a company tomorrow in their boardroom, going over their policy and program. I just say that to say that that's what we do, and that's also available to you as well. Happy to come and meet with you and look at your policy and make sure it's working for you. So a bit about me. My name is John Rakoczy. I'm the founder and CEO of Assure Occupational Testing, which is coming up to 16 years that we've been around. And what we do here at Assure is drug and alcohol testing, occupational health testing, which of course includes audiometric testing, mask fitting, pulmonary function health assessments, physical abilities testing. And we do all of that in our office across Western Canada and many of our partner companies that we work with, as well as in our mobile testing trailer. And I also get to do training like we're doing now, and supervise a reasonable cause training, and help companies with their policies, programs, and procedures. So where we're going to go today is I've got these five things for us lined up for us to discuss today. Talk about what is the purpose of a well-written policy, specifically drug and alcohol policy. What are the components? What needs to be in a great policy? And appendices. What are some supplemental documents that you can have in your policy that help to beef it up? What are some common pitfalls that you can avoid? So this is where I'm going to be sharing, as I've looked at other companies' policies, and I've read a lot of different policies, and here's some common things that I've seen when I go to the company, sit down with them, and I make suggestions about things that are, some inconsistencies. I'm going to give you some of those things. And then implementation. What are the rollout procedures, not just when there's a new policy in place, but if you're going to your policy and kind of giving it an overhaul, it's important. What are the important things to think about when you're going to implement or roll out a new or an updated policy? So to begin with, disclaimer, this presentation today is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice of any kind. So once I sit down with a company and review their policy, make updates, or write a new one, it's part of what I do too, is, I can create a policy from scratch. But one thing that we do is it gets to be, accepted and approved by management and owners of a company. And then the next thing that you want to do is you want to send that to your company legal team to get that approved, signed off by them. So today, informational purposes only. your policies, of course, get to get reviewed by your legal team. So what is the purpose of a drug and alcohol policy? Why do we have them in place? It's for more than just, well, so I can get the contract. We kind of needed to put one together so that we could get work. That's important, and we hope, and our hope and desire is that it's for something deeper than that. And what that is it sets the standard and expectation around substance use and fitness for duty. What does it mean to be fit for duty in this workplace? And what is okay and not okay around substance use in this workplace? By substance use, I mean talking about alcohol, talking about illegal drugs, talking about legal drugs, talking about cannabis, talking about prescriptions. All of that is underneath that term substance. So what's okay? Because we get a lot of questions around, well, I'm on medication that might show up on a drug test. Is that okay to be taking at work? So you want to make sure that your drug and alcohol policy is answering those questions for your employees. So the policy should be a document that employees can read and clearly get answers to some of these questions that they've got. Number 2, establishes a clear plan to mitigate risks associated with substance use. So if somebody's got issues with substance use abuse or addiction, then your policy should talk about, well, what are the next steps? How do we support employees here in this workplace? Number 3, offers support to people who may have substance use concerns. So some policies that I read are, when I read them, it can be read very punitive. And what I mean by that is the focus is, if you do this, here's the consequence. Do this, consequence focused, punitive focused. So I've heard a lawyer talk about this, and to me it was it always stood out to me, and it's really influenced how I've written and reviewed policies ever since then. A policy, what the judges and arbitrators don't want to see is a policy that's very punitive focused. It should be focused on prevention and helping employees who may have issues with substance use, as opposed to punitive. That's an important piece of it. And prevention and support also gets to be an important piece of your policy. Lastly, improves employee relationships, communication, and corporate image. Most people want to work at a company who places a high standard on workplace safety. And when there's substance use in the workplace, when there's employee who shows up to work smelling of alcohol, they've done that for years. Everybody kind of knows this employee's got a problem, but nobody tends to do anything about it. That can erode company culture. So what I'm going to walk you through next are the components and the sections of the drug and alcohol policies template that I've written. So I've written a number of policies for companies, safety sensitive companies, oil and gas, trucking, and First Nations. And here's kind of the general template that I follow. Every policy there gets to be tailored and made specific to your specific company. But what I'm going to walk you through is based on all of the research that I've done of the many policies that I've written are researched. I mean, this is what I've created. So a policy starts with a scope. The scope means, who does this policy apply to? So if you're going to say our company does drug and alcohol testing, well, who is subject to drug and alcohol testing? You want to get specific. Is it everybody, or is it just safety sensitive positions? If it's just safety sensitive, then who does that actually mean? What is safety sensitive? Which positions in your company are safety sensitive and which are not? Your policy gets to clearly identify, who does this apply to? So that's the scope. Does it apply? You want to spell it out. Is it employees? Is it full-time, part-time? Is it contractors, candidates? Is it the board? Is it management, supervisors? If there's people that it doesn't apply to, you just want to make sure that's spelled out here. And you want to also touch on here, when does it apply? We don't want to assume or take for granted anything here. It gets to be specific. When on company property, while operating company vehicles, while carrying out work for the company, does it apply when employees are on call? It's another important piece to think about. They're not in the office, they're not in the shop, they're not on site, but they're at home, and they could be called to work at any given moment. So when you're on call, does it also apply when you're on call? You want to make sure that's spelled out in this scope. Second section to look at is communications. We've got, here's who the policy applies to. The next is we're going to make sure this policy is properly and broadly communicated to those people that we've just identified in the scope. So how is it going to be communicated to supervisors and to employees? So the supervisor drug and alcohol education will be provided to anyone responsible for directing work with a focus on identification and management of impairments. So you want to make sure that you're providing education around this policy, making sure that your employees are fully aware of it, they understand it, they've been given an opportunity to ask questions about it. And your supervisors get to be the most aware of this policy and understand it and the steps. When do we do testing? When do we not do testing? When do we do post-incident testing? Do we do pre-employment testing here, or do we not? You want to make sure that you're having meetings and sessions to just specifically designed to focus on the A&D policy. Secondly, the employees. So there's supervisor, that's a separate meetings and level of education and communication that gets to be given to management, and then different meetings get to be had for employees to answer their questions and to make sure they understand. If you're things like, here's some examples, make sure they understand that you as an employee here at this company, you are subject to drug and alcohol testing under these circumstances: pre-employment, pre-access, reasonable cause, post-incident, follow-up, return to duty, whatever it is. You want to make sure that they're clearly aware. We do drug testing here. We do alcohol testing. If you show up to work and are showing signs of being not fit for duty, we have the right and the obligation to request a reasonable cause drug test. Here's what a reasonable cause drug test means, and here's the steps. We will immediately remove you from duty. You will be asked to go down to Assure Occupational Testing or one of our partner companies and complete a test. And if you fail the test, here's the next steps. If you pass the test, here's the next steps. So you want to make sure this education, these sessions happen. So the next section that is vital, and to me, this is kind of for the A&D work rule, alcohol and drug work rule. To me, this forms the crux. This could be like the most important piece of your policy, because it really spells out what is okay and what is not okay when it comes to substance use in the work rule. So this I've taken direct, what you're seeing on your screen here is verbatim from the newest model or the newest edition of the Canadian model for providing a safe workplace. If you're not aware of that document, that's what is considered best practice in Canada for drug and alcohol testing policies and procedures. Canadian model for providing a safe workplace. You can Google that. It's a free document on Energy Safety Canada, Construction Owners Association websites. Download as a PDF, but what you're seeing, I've just taken verbatim, and it states it's prohibited to, while on company premises or work site, to use, consume, distribute, possess, transport, or offer for sale alcohol, cannabis, medications, illegal drugs, or mood-altering substances, as well as paraphernalia or any product that could tamper with a sample for testing. It is also prohibited to report to work or work with an alcohol level equal to or in excess of 0.04 grams per 210. So this is important because your policy gets to define what is a positive test result, what is a negative test result. So we've got to spell it out. So right here, it spells out 0.04 is the cutoff level. This is Canadian model. This is what Canadian model follows. That's why that's on there. If you're under the DOT, if you're crossing international borders, then you're under the DOT regulations, and theirs is 0.02. So you want to be aware of that as well. But most people are the cutoff is 0.4 for alcohol. Now we've defined what is a positive, what is a negative test result for alcohol. We also get to define, your policy gets to define the same when it comes to substances, to drugs. So that's where this next section comes in. It's prohibited to report to work or work with a drug level equal to or in excess of the concentrations set out in Appendix B. So this Appendix B, of course, is straight out of the drug and alcohol template that I have created. Yours are probably going to be different appendix, where a medical review officer has verified the results as a positive test result. So those concentrations, most of you are probably familiar with. There's two graphs, there's two charts. One's got the cutoff levels for urine, another one's got the cutoff levels for oral fluid. You're going to find those in the Canadian model for providing a safe workplace in that document that you can Google. So we're not stepping outside of this. Most, 99.9% of us are going to follow in Canada, are going to be following those cutoff levels that are defined in the Canadian model. It's not advised to step outside of that. If you do, you want to make sure that you've done some research and you can back up the decision why you want to say, the cutoff level for marijuana, for example, is 50 nanograms per milliliter in urine. On a screen, on a confirmation, it's 15 nanograms per milliliter. So if you're going to choose to step outside of that, you better have, be able to back it up if you were ever to be kind of taken to task, taken to court. But so most of us are just following those. And that lays out what's a positive test result and what's a negative test result. It's also prohibited to report to work or work while the employee's ability to safely perform their duties is adversely affected because of the use of alcohol, cannabis, illegal drugs, mood-altering substances, including the inappropriate use of prescription, authorization, or over-the-counter drugs, and legal recreational drugs. Some companies like to really spell out cannabis. Some companies don't. Some companies are comfortable with saying alcohol and illegal drugs, mood-altering substances. Some want to specify and put that word cannabis in there to really send the message to employees that, and to twig in their minds that even though cannabis is legal, just like alcohol is legal, it's still not okay to be used and consumed, to be showing up under the influence of those illegal substances, similar to medications. It's also prohibited to refuse to comply with a request to undergo a test, and it's also prohibited to tamper with the sample. So that's an example of this, what's included. And there can be a few other things that you include under that work rule, but that's generally it. This is the arguably the most important section of the policy. So next, you want to define, well, who's responsible for what when it comes to enforcing and carrying out and adhering to this drug and alcohol policy that we're talking about. So what is everybody's responsibilities? So you might define, and you should define, the employee expectations. Examples there are employees are expected to adhere to the policy, to understand it, to when you're onboarded, you're going to sign a document that states, I've been given a copy of the policy. I've been given an opportunity to ask any questions. I understand it, and I agree to abide by its terms. They're going to sign off on a statement similar to that. And it's an employee expectation would also be, if I see somebody else conducting themselves in a manner that is not adhering to the drug and alcohol policy, I am going to report that to my supervisor. It's not about being a tattletale. It's about creating a safe workplace for everybody, for myself and for everybody who works here. The second, number two there under responsibilities is what is management responsible for? So you might call your managers supervisors, you might call them managers or leaders. So whatever term makes the most sense for your workplace, you're going to put that there. What are they expected to do? They have different expectations than employees. Supervisors and managers are going to take action. An example is when there's a reported violation of or suspected violation of a drug and alcohol policy, I am going to take action. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to go and meet with that employee. I'm going to remove them from duty. We're going to have an investigation into this. Number three, is there different expectations for safety managers versus human resources? So I put, safe manager, human resources again, because you get to focus this on what terms what makes the most sense in your company. Who's enforcing, who's responsible for writing and revising and updating this policy? Maybe it's a safety manager in a company, maybe it's HR. So what is their expectation? So just like that, it might be to do research, to hire somebody to write the policy, to get legal to sign off on it, and what are the owner expectations? So the next section that we'll talk about is prevention, voluntary disclosure, and aftercare. You might choose to call it one of those, all of those, something different, but the overarching point of this section, very, very important section in a policy, is How are you offering to support to your employees who may have problems with substances or who are known to have problems with substances? So this is the prevention piece, and getting ahead of a problem before it becomes a problem. So you want to send in this section, what you want to send a message to your employees about is, if you feel like you may have a problem with alcohol, with prescription drugs, with marijuana use, and you feel like that might be an issue, or it is now, or it might be in the future, in terms of showing up to work fit for duty every day, we want you to come to us and tell us now. We want to offer support to you now, before it becomes an issue. We don't want issues. We don't want you crashing a vehicle. We don't want you injuring yourself, injuring somebody else, putting others at risk. If you feel so, and this piece is important, and it goes along with how the company conducts itself in many other ways, to create an environment where people feel safe and comfortable to come in to say, I do have a problem with alcohol, or I don't know, I used to, it might flare up again. I just want to disclose this, and I want to work with you to create a plan for me, and so that you guys are aware, so that I can stay safe at work every day. So prevention, voluntary disclosure, just like I described. You would rather your employees come to you and say, I've got a problem, I want some help. So you want them to be able to, feel safe to come do that. And thirdly, here is aftercare. After they receive assistance, the employee will participate in ongoing support to ensure personal and corporate safety. So what is assistance? Some examples of assistance are, they went for counseling, they've gone to inpatient addiction treatment, outpatient addiction treatment, detox. They've gone and had an assessment with a substance abuse professional. So, and that's always our first recommendation, is if an employee test negative or test positive on a drug or alcohol test, the next step is to have them assessed by a substance abuse professional. If they come and voluntarily disclose that they have or may have a substance use concern, first step that we're going to recommend is substance abuse professional assessment. So that gives you, that's a couple-hour assessment with someone who's specifically trained to Department of Transportation standards. That's the highest standard for an SAP to be trained at in North America, specifically trained to address substance use concerns in the workplace, and to make treatment recommendations and follow-up recommendations specific for safety-sensitive workplaces. That's why we refer only to SAPs, substance abuse professionals. So next section that's important to consider is investigation guidelines. So what this encompasses, what are we investigating? We're investigating, it might seem like a bit of a strong word, but essentially it's if somebody comes with a problem, we're going to investigate. Is there a problem, or I feel like I don't know if I have it technically, I'm addicted or not, but I might have a problem. We're going to carry out an investigation. If there was an incident, if there was reasonable cause situation, if somebody showed up to work under the influence, showing signs of being not fit for duty, self-disclosed or otherwise, what are we going to do in those situations? That's what we're talking about here. What are the next steps? So drug and alcohol testing gets covered under here. So which situations? So in a policy, when I'm writing it, I'm specifically spelling out, here at this company, we conduct pre-employment testing, and then define that. What does that actually mean? And then a paragraph on pre-access testing, if you conduct pre-access testing. Under what situations or circumstances do you conduct that? Do you do post-incident, reasonable cause? Now, the term reasonable cause, your company might say reasonable grounds, reasonable suspicion, all of those, arguably the same thing. Just be consistent in your policy with whatever you're calling it. Do you conduct follow-up testing, return to duty testing? Do you conduct random testing? Most people are not conducting random. That's a whole nother discussion about the legalities of random drug and alcohol testing in Canada. But this is your section where you're going to spell out what situations do we conduct testing in. Secondly, possession. If someone's found to be possessing drugs and alcohol at work, paraphernalia, there's a baggie of some white powder in it, and it's confirmed to be illegal substance. What are you going to do in those situations? Do you conduct searches on personal property in the workplace, of vehicles in the parking lot? Do you conduct searches of a locker at a work site, of a lunch kit or a jacket, if you have reason to believe that there may be something, drugs or alcohol or a banned substance as defined in your policy. Do you conduct that or not? If so, you want to make sure that your employees are fully aware of this. Another important piece that I think is important to put in here is if you, in order to carry out your job, you need to drive a truck, you need to have a valid driver's license, class 5, class 1, doesn't matter. If you need a valid driver's license for your job, you have a duty to inform us if you lose that license. Immediately, you need to inform us. So it's another good one to include in your policy. Another good one that I think is really important for management to have some discussions around is when there's a company event, a Christmas party, a conference that the team goes to in Vancouver, is alcohol use permitted? Well, we'll now count it. Cannabis is legal. Is cannabis use permitted? Let's have these discussions prior to an event and something happens and someone smoked up and, oh my gosh, I thought everybody knew. Like, why would you think that was okay? Well, have you had those discussions? Is it clearly spelled out in your policy? Have those discussions before an event. Next section for your policy to include is testing procedures. If you conduct drug and alcohol testing, you want to spell out some things. Who's going to do your testing? Is a third party going to do it? You don't need to spell out the specific clinic, but who qualifies? Is it someone our receptionist? Is it, again, a third party? We're hiring that out. We're outsourcing that to Assure Occupational Testing because they've got clinics all over every province. They've got more availability. They're trained to DOT standards. So that's best practice. And the Canadian model talks about this as well. People who's qualified to perform drug and alcohol testing is people trained to DOT testing standards. That's what all of us at Assure, our technicians and nurses are trained to. So you want to spell that out. Who receives the results? What level of management? So I wouldn't put names in here. Policies are going to be that specific because if an employee quits, then you got to redo your policy. So you're just going to put the title, safety manager, HR manager. Who gets results? Who's responsible for managing results? Because you send somebody to us at Assure, we do a drug test. We need to be reporting those results to someone. We don't report them. We give a verbal report and sometimes a paper copy report to the employee, but more importantly, who at the office is going to get that. And under the testing procedures, it will also spell out what do you do in situations like these. An employee fails to report to Assure for their drug test. They were scheduled in this morning at 10 o'clock. You get a call from Assure at 10:30 and says, Joe has not showed up for his drug test. What do you do in that situation? What do you do in a situation if Joe does show up for his test, but he's brought in something that's with the intention of adulterating his sample? He's brought in synthetic urine, for example. He's tampered with his sample. What if there's a refusal to test? Refusal to test could be he shows up to our clinic. We let him know that before you can go into the secure private washroom, you need to leave your jacket. You need to empty your pockets. You need to remove outer clothing, remove your hat. And he says, I ain't doing any of that. No, I'm not doing that. We call that a refusal to test. When you refuse to comply with the procedures, that's one example of a refusal. Then we don't proceed with the test. Your policy gets to spell this out as well. How are you going to handle each of those situations? So the next section that you want to cover is, okay, now you get the results. How do you handle each of the types of results that you get? So what if you get a negative test result? Some of you might think, oh, negative test result, awesome, that's what we want. Okay, back to work. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So here's an example. If it's pre-employment or pre-access, negative test result, that's pretty clear. That's what you want. Okay, you get to go, get in the truck, off you go to site, go to work. If it's a reasonable cause situation and somebody's showing up and they're showing signs of being not fit for duty, they're showing some physical, some visible signs of being not fit for duty. They're sleepy, they're staggering, they're slurring their speech. We thought he might be drunk or hungover, but we just sent him for the breathalyzer and he passed. So you're not just going to stop there. Your investigation is going to continue. You're going to say, there's got to be something else going on here. We need you to go and see a doctor. Something else is going on. So investigation is going to continue. So secondly, positive test result. You're going to spell out things like, if we do instant or express or the screen tests, we're always going to send those, and it's a non-negative on the instant test, the one that we do the dip into the cup in our office. If anything shows up on that and it's non-negative, it's always going to go to the lab for confirmation testing. So that is best practice. That's always our recommendation. And then if it comes back as a confirmed positive from the medical review officer, what are the next steps? Are they removed from duty? You want to spell out now what? What if they refuse to test? We just touched on that one. What if it's a canceled sample? So sometimes the laboratory will come back and it'll be a canceled sample. I would say it's probably less than 1% of any collection that us at Assure are sending to the laboratory that come back this way, just to give you an idea. This very rarely happens, but it can happen. Examples here is a bottle gets broken and opened in transport. We send it by Purelator, it's overnighted. Purelator ruins the sample. Could be an example. Something happens, an error happens at the lab. It gets canceled. The lab says we need you to recollect. What do you do in those situations? So just, again, you want to think through these scenarios and have it written out. So now moving on, someone has violated the policy. Going back here, there's been a positive test, there's a refusal, or it's, let's focus on those two, positive or refusal. Now there's going to be consequences because they have violated the policy. There's consequences to violating the company policy. So your policy should likely include a statement similar to this. Discipline for failure to comply with this policy may include a variety of reasonable measures, up to and including termination for cause. It's not always going to be termination, but it might be. Consequences can also include a SAP assessment, substance abuse professional assessment. So if someone tests positive on a drug test or they refuse to test, the first thing, again, that we recommend is you send them for a substance abuse professional assessment to find out, is this person addicted? Do they abuse? That's an important distinction that the SAP is going to make because the treatment plan for each of those is very different. And the requirement, the responsibility to accommodate that person differs. Because you as a company have a responsibility to accommodate disability. Addiction is viewed as a disability in Canada. Abuse is not viewed as a disability. So how do we know if they're addicted or do they abuse? You don't need to. You need to refer to the professional who is able and trained to make that diagnosis. That's a SAP. So, and they give a report back to you as a company that you then take and create a return to duty plan with. Maybe you need to say, so consequences might involve, you need more information. We're going to request a medical assessment, whether with their doctor or with a company chosen physician, occupational health physician. And it's going to always include, whenever there's a consequence, there's always going to be a return to duty agreement, return to work. There's different names for this document, but you're going to create a return to duty agreement for this employee. So this is part of what, when we send our clients' employees to a SAP for an assessment, that's part of what we do. So we've got SAPs that we work with at Assure, and this is done virtually. These SAP assessments are done virtually, which is amazing because they can be off work, they can be on leave, they can be wherever, and they can get this booked within days. Whenever a request comes to us, we're booking these SAP assessments virtually within days of the request coming in. So our SAPs understand that with this, this needs to happen quickly because people are on disability, people are waiting to know, are we sending this employee back to work or are we not? So SAP assessment is going to happen quickly, and then that report comes to us at Assure, which we then provide to you. But also what we provide to you as the company is a return to duty agreement, which is based on the recommendations that come from that SAP report. They're meeting with the employee, they're creating a treatment plan. We turn that into a return to duty agreement that is sent to you, and you, of course, have the final say. It's your program, you get to enforce it, but we send it a template to you that you can then use and create a return to work plan for that employee. So next important section is confidentiality. You really want to spell out and make it understood to your staff that confidentiality is important to us, and any information that you disclose to us, test results, we treat with the highest level of confidentiality and respect here. And so you just really want to make sure this is spelled out clearly. Even, test results, who gets to see them, who doesn't get to see them. Not everybody needs to see everything. Only the people that really need to know should be seeing this information. So spell out in your policy who gets to see this. And so here's some important things that I like to put in the appendix section of the policies. So definitions. This is kind of a standard. This definitely needs to be in there. Who does this policy apply to? What is the work rule? What is a laboratory? What is safety sensitive? What does that mean here? Who is a manager? Who is an employee? Who's a candidate? Who's a contractor? You're spelling out everything, so it's very, very clear. What are the testing standards? So by testing standards, I'm talking about those charts, the cutoff levels that are found in the Canadian model for providing a safe workplace. If your company's going to conduct oral fluid testing, then you're going to have a chart for urine testing and for oral fluid. If you just do urine, then you can just put them in, just do urine. So a separate note on that, on those charts. Most of you are going to be familiar with the cutoff levels and the charts that I'm talking about. Some of you, that's directly in the body of the policy. What I like to do is something a little bit different. Either put it in the appendix as an appendix, so that if it changes, if next month Canadian model for providing a safe workplace gets updated, now you're just tweaking, updating one page of a policy, and not, it's a little bit quicker and easier too, rather than the whole document. Or you might say, we're not putting those cutoff levels in there at all. We're just going to put a line in there that says we follow the cutoff levels as written, as determined in Canadian model for providing a safe workplace, something like that. So third, employee acknowledgement form. I like to have these forms all in one place. You might say, no, we do HR a little differently. That's okay. These are just examples. But I like to have it, anything that's related to the drug and alcohol policy. Where do we find that? Oh, it's in the policy. In that binder. I feel like saying in that binder is like archaic anymore. Do we keep things like this in binders? It's probably all online somewhere. But it's all in that one file. So the acknowledgement form, meaning this is where employees can sign off and say, I've read the policy, I agree to abide by its terms. The medical clearance form. So this, what this is you want to encourage your employees who may be on prescription meds that could be impairing, you want to encourage them to be disclosing that to their supervisor prior to coming to work, so that you can create a safe work plan. Fit for duty disclosure form, similar to, a little bit different. If they feel like they may have an issue with being showing up fit for duty, this could be sleep, this could be mental health, this could encompass other things, more than just substances, but substances definitely fall under this. You might want to put that here. What are the reasonable cause steps? So for our clients, I include, it's just a 2-page, 5-step, what are the 5 steps of reasonable cause investigation? Put that in there so that when there's a reasonable cause situation, again, it's just a quick steps to follow for your staff, your supervisors. What do? Pull out that 2-page form and just follow the steps. It's all laid out. And then the reasonable cause report form. So this is the form that a supervisor fills out when it's reported that Joe showed up this morning and he smells like booze and he's staggering, and I'm pretty sure he's not fit for duty. So this is the form that your supervisors are going to fill out to document what are they seeing, what are they hearing, what are they witnessing firsthand. So another important piece is to think about is, okay, you've just built a new policy. You've just updated it. You've kind of given it overhaul. It's been 5 years, 10 years since we did it. So, okay, we've just really revamped this. So in order to now we're going to do testing. We've kind of had a policy. Here's some examples of things that I've heard from other people is we've had this policy for a long time. We've actually never done any testing. And now we're just going to start doing testing. So if that's the case, then you want to give, a period of time for employees to come into compliance with the policy. Which kind of fits under rollout procedures. That's what I'm meaning by this. So you want to properly communicate the implementation of a new policy or an updated one or one that we've had, and now we're actually just going to enforce it and carry it out. We're actually going to start doing the testing. So some you can hear different things about you need to give people 30 days to come into compliance. Some will say 60. Some might say 90. I feel like 90 is a little excessive personally, but you rather than saying the policy takes effect on Monday, and you've got a culture of employees and supervisors who may have been, operating under the assumption, or not the assumption, but the reality that we've never done testing before, and a bunch of us smoke pot recreationally, and everybody knows it's not a secret. And now you're saying that we could be subject to testing starting next Monday. You get to give people time to come into compliance with this. As well as, so rollout procedures, you get to properly communicate this when it's implemented as well as ongoing. So when you're onboarding new employees, it seems like, that's the most common. We're usually thinking about this. What do we need to get them to sign? We're familiar with the list of things they get to sign. And this is included in it, sign off on the policy. But you also get to bring it up later on when there's staff meetings and safety meetings, for example, at least once a year, potentially a couple of times a year, and at least an annual refresher. So some other things to think about when you're rolling out a new policy is, first off, of course, before you roll it out, you get to have a well-written company owner reviewed, lawyer reviewed policy. It's polished, it's ready. We're not going to start communicating it and educating people on it until we know, okay, we've thought everything through. We've got it reviewed by people who are working in the field and study this, reviewed by legal. We're ready to go. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to educate your employees. You're going to educate your supervisors on it. So we've just refreshed the policy on June 1st. It's going to come into effect, and we're going to make copies available. But first, another thing to have in place is drug and alcohol testing provider and a substance abuse professional in place, return to duty program and procedures in place. So it's one thing to, roll it out on June 1st, but what if on June 2nd you have an incident? You want to be prepared for that. So you want to have all of that in place now. So who are we going to use for testing? We've got an account set up with them. They have a substance abuse professional we can use. Okay, good. We've just had these discussions. We can put our mind at ease. We've got the steps in place. Return to duty program and procedures. What are we going to do if someone is non-compliant with the policy? Okay, we've got procedures in place. We know what we're doing. We've educated our team on that. And we've got investigation tools and procedures. We've got the reasonable cause form. Yep, that's an appendix in our policy. The fit for duty checklist. Before people go to work, they're filling out this fit for duty checklist. Yep, that's in place. And we've got procedures in place to evaluate this drug and alcohol program. On an annual basis, it's in our calendar on February 1st that HR and management meets to review this policy. So some steps, putting all of that together into some steps: owner and management approval, doing the education of your staff, how you can educate them. Some examples are in a meeting, sending out by email, intranet, so internal communication, ways they communicate internally online, putting a note on a paycheck if that's possible for your HR, sending out a newsletter, posters, and copies in staff rooms. So you just want to widely make this available to employees. So if and when there's an issue in the future, you're minimizing people coming to say, I didn't know that was rolled out on June 1st. It's news to me. Third is promote EAP support. So you really want to let people know we're here to support you. If you feel like you've got a concern, We're not trying to get rid of you. We want to support you. So come to us now and let's get you some help. Everybody gets to sign an acceptance letter saying, yes, I agree to abide by this A&D policy. You've trained your supervisors and managers in order to understand what impairment in the workplace looks like, what it sounds like, what it acts like, able to recognize it in employees, and that they know properly how to deal with it. There's 5 steps of a reasonable cause investigation, and they know what those 5 steps are, and they're confident that, in the steps. So we offer that training here at Assure. Again, that's all virtual as well. Or we can come to your boardroom. So and of course, before you roll it out, you're gonna have a start date. You're gonna say, here's the date that it comes into effect. Before that date, we need your acceptance letters, ask any questions, you're gonna talk to John, here's his phone number, here's his email. Answer your question, get those questions asked before that date. We're here to support you. So a couple more slides, and the next one is common pitfalls to avoid. So as I've read through policies and reviewed them, here's some of the most common issues, mistakes that I see is generally people not proofreading them. Simple things like grammar, but more importantly, it's inconsistency in language and terminology. So examples are, we're calling it reasonable grounds here, reasonable cause here. We're saying we do a urine drug test up here when we've already kind of decided we're going to leave that out. We're not going to say urine or oral fluid in the policy. We're going to say that we do drug and alcohol testing in these situations. But these words are generally, what I'm seeing is a lot of people, writing their own policies, doing research, and then they copy and paste this section here, they copy this. And as you go through it, you can kind of tell it's kind of copied and pasted because the terms you're saying the same thing, kind of, but it's different terms used to describe the same thing. So you can just tell it's a real chopped up document sometimes. So you want there to be consistency in language and terminology. Cutoff levels. Some people, we're currently operating in Canadian model for providing a safe workplace 6.1, but still referencing the cutoff levels in 6.0 as an example. Number 4, punitive focused versus supportive and preventative focused. That one I covered early on. If you're taken to court and your A&D policy is going to be scrutinized, what the courts don't want to see is that it's just very punitively focused and not offering support and prevention to your employees. It gets to offer both. The 5th one is you're having a policy in place but actually not enforcing it. Saying we do pre-employment testing, but all the current staff says I was never tested when I was hired. So when if you're not going to enforce it, why is there one? Sends a message of potentially sends a message of safety isn't taken seriously here, or we might say this, or we just do this to look good. We don't actually follow through with it. It can send some odd messages. So if you've got it, enforce it. Lastly, not having a program in place to support the policy. So you've done a good job, you've written the policy, but then falling short on the procedures, the implementation aspect of it. So what that's looked like is a company sending someone to us for a drug test, they fail the drug test, and the company then kind of does nothing with it. They just allow that employee to go back to work. And I think this is that can happen for lots of reasons, and it can happen because we don't really know, miscommunication. I thought she was taking care of that. And nobody was taking care of it. Nobody is quite clear on the next steps, or we had nobody else to drive the truck. We kind of needed them. So it could happen for lots of reasons, but to me, we're missing a real important opportunity here to provide some support to this employee who's clearly got a problem. If they're showing up to work not being fit for duty and failing on a drug test, there's clearly an opportunity or a problem where we're missing an opportunity to provide support to them. So finally, how we can support you is in 3 different ways. First two when it comes to policy. If you want somebody to review your drug and alcohol policy and your program, I'm more than happy to do that. So here's an example of what that looks like. Meeting with a company tomorrow afternoon to do just this. A couple of weeks ago, they emailed me the drug and alcohol policy program, emailed me the docs. I reviewed them on my own. I've got a list of suggestions and recommendations that I'm going to make with them. I'm going to meet with management and owners tomorrow at their office. We'll review them, and then I'll offer to them, if you want to take these suggestions and go and do it on your own, great. And so, if you've got a team that's able to do that, great. If not, if you want me to take that back and to do that, and then to come back and present, a completely revised and written for you policy, that's available. Second option is if you say, we're pretty good at writing policy, but I would like a template to start with. And we've got the team that's educated and able to do this. Great. We've got the template for you if that would support you as well. So that's the second option for you. And then thirdly is supervisor reasonable cause training. So Canadian model for providing a safe workplace and the DOT is required. Canadian model is recommendation that all of your management level teams should be trained to recognize signs of impairment in the workplace. We offer this, again, if you've got a group and you want us to come to your office in person, that's available. You want to do just a training just for your team virtually like this, that's available. Or you can attend our group virtual training that we offer every second month as well. And another piece of that is the training is to helping them understand what's okay and not okay, around impairment, as well as policy. There's a piece on policy in there. So we have covered a lot of ground today, and I feel like maybe that was a little fast. So if there's questions, and I should have said this at the beginning, if there's questions, put them in the chat, but if not, let me know now if there's questions. Otherwise, we will leave it there. And my email is there, john@assuretesting.com. Happy to answer any questions, or phone number is there. Give us a call. Myself, Carrie is our operations manager. She's happy to assist you in any of this, any of your testing and occupational health needs. So it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And we look forward to working with you and seeing you in the future. Take care.